and welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Elvin-Stoltore, and I'm a genealogist and a passionate traveler. Over the last few years, I've been featuring each fille du roi, or king's daughter. But last year, I decided I wanted to do les filles mariées, so I began that series. We are on episode 57. We've come a long way, but there's about 262 of them, so we still got some ways to go. Before I show you episode 57, I want to show you ways you can support the channel. The first three keep you in the know, subscribe, like, and notify. The next three are ways to help the channel grow. We have Ko-fi, which is a standalone platform where you can donate however much you want. And then we have Patreon, which is a monthly subscription. And we also have, on my Have Roots Will Travel website, a PayPal button that you can donate as well. Thank you to all of you who have done so this far. I really appreciate all your support and your encouragement. I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. So with that being said, let's get started. We can date les filles mariées between 1634 and 1662. They would be about 262 women for an average of 28 years, which gives you an average of about 10 a year. It wasn't enough to populate a country, but those ladies who came across were so brave and so determined that they were not sponsored by and did not receive any money. They simply came across for a new life and to obviously get married. They had to marry. And so basically these are the founding grandmothers of Quebec. These are the people that were there when there really wasn't even a town in many respects. They were there ahead of many of the settlements that occurred. So let's get to know one of them who came before. Les filles mariées, episode 57, takes us to Elisabeth Isabelle Targer. And she is a viewer request originally. And then I found her in my video that I produced about Taylor Swift's Quebec ancestry. You can check it out in the playlist. And also she is one of mine. So it's very fascinating to be able to really study this lady a little bit more in depth. So let's get started. Elisabeth Isabelle was born 1635 in La Rochelle, France. Her parents were Daniel Targer and Louise Martin. Her sister, Marie Targer, is a fille du roi, who we profiled in episode 81. And Elisabeth Isabelle was married to a man named Simon Piat, but was widowed. Elisabeth Isabelle was baptized at the Church de Saint-Nicolas, which originated in 1145, and it was rebuilt after the Protestant uprisings around 1647. Just to give you a little bit of information about La Rochelle, it was founded during the 10th century and became an important harbor in the 12th. Until the 15th century, La Rochelle was to be the largest French harbor on the Atlantic coast, dealing mainly in wine, salt, and cheese. Eleanor married Henry Plantagenet in 1152, and he became King of England as Henry II in 1154, thus putting La Rochelle under Plantagenet rule, until Louis VIII captured it in the 1224 siege of La Rochelle. During the Plantagenet control of the city in 1185, Henry II had the Vauclair Castle built, remains of which are still visible in the Place de Verdun. From 1568 on, La Rochelle became a center for the Huguenots. It was in La Rochelle that the Protestant revolts occurred and created the uprising that would become known as the Siege of La Rochelle. Throughout the 1600s, the Huguenots were expelled from La Rochelle. I don't know if they were Protestant or not. I don't think so. Certainly, they would have been exposed to the violence that was going on, and that was probably one of the reasons they left, if they in fact did not have a Upon the death of her father and becoming a widow, Elizabeth decided to try her luck in New France. She arrived in Quebec in 1659. She was 24 years old. The groom she selected and who selected her, his name was Maître Gerbert de La Fontaine. He was born in 1627 in the city of Nantes in France. His parents were Jean Gerbert and Perrine Pellet. Now, Nantes is part of the Pays de la Loire region, and inside the region, the département or county, if you want, is Loire-Atlantique. Nantes is the sixth largest city in France with about 320,000 people, with a metropolitan area that includes 1 million. It historically belongs to and culturally belongs to Brittany. It has existed since at least the 8th century BC, when it became part of the Roman Empire during the Bretons' capture in 851. Nantes became the residence of the Dukes of Brittany, elevating its stature. It was during the 14th century, when Anne of Brittany married Charles VIII in 1491, that Brittany and France were finally joined by Francis I. The famous Edict of Nantes was obviously signed here in 1598 and legalized the religion of Protestantism. A more challenging part of the history was its involvement in the African slave trade. Ships would go to West Africa to buy slaves. Slaves were then sold in the French West Indies, where they would return to Nantes with sugar and other goods from the region. The total number of slaves would number 450,000 between 1707 to 1793. So this is a very sad part of the history of this region. Maître and Isabelle were married on the 4th of October, 1659 at Quebec City. The family would settle on Ile d'Orléans. Ile d'Orléans is located in the St. Lawrence River, about 3 miles east of downtown Quebec City. The island was one of the first parts of the province to be colonized by the French, and a large percentage of French Canadians can trace their ancestry to the early residents of the island. The island has been described as the microcosm of traditional Quebec and as the birthplace of Francophones in North America. And just so you know, it wasn't always called Ile d'Orléans. It was at one point called Grande Ile, Sainte-Marie, and Saint-Laurent during different parts of the 17th and 18th century. But the officials later changed the name to Ile d'Orléans in honor of Henry II, the Duke of Orléans, who happened to be the second son of King Francis I. And we can see here in the census, we have 1666 census, we have Maître. He is listed as 35 years of age. Isabelle, 32. Jacques, their son, 6 years of age. Marie-Madeleine is 3. Jacques is 1 year. And then in the 1667 census, we have Maître Gerbert. Isabelle, she's actually gotten younger, which you can see she was 32 in 1666, and now in 1667 she's 30. We've got Marie-Madeleine, we have Jacques, Jean. They have 2 beasts, and they own 10 arpents, which is about 8 acres of land. I want to draw your attention to the fact of this little map on the right middle, because you have to understand that Ile d'Orléans, despite being an island, is subdivided into 6 regions. And those regions are Sainte-Pétronille, Saint-Pierre, Sainte-Famille, Saint-François, Saint-Jean, Saint-Laurent. So when you see the different parts, Saint-Jean, Ile d'Orléans, know that your people came from that particular church and that particular region. And in fact, they would move around. They would start off at Saint-Famille, which was the oldest division, if you will, or oldest church. And then sometimes they would move over to Saint-François or Saint-Jean, depending on land and that sort of thing. So it's important to note where your family was on the island. They would go on to have 7 children. Marie would marry Pierre Saint-Pierre and have 15 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. Jacques would pass away at 3 years of age. Marie-Madeleine would marry Guillaume Fabat and would have 1 child who made it to adulthood. Jacques would marry Marie Pelletier and have 4 children, all of whom made it to adulthood before his early death at 33. Jean would die at 5 years of age. Pierre would die at 3. Marie-Elisabeth would marry Gervais Fouché and have 14 children, 7 of whom would make it to adulthood. In case you're wondering why that little box is pink, that's because that is my direct line from our Isabelle Targer. And it also happens to be great-grandfather as well. So we share not only a fille du roi, but the descendancy as well. So that was kind of exciting when I realized that. Isabelle would pass away sometime between April 10th, 1670, from the birth of her last child in January of 1671. She was not more than 35 years of age, and more likely died in childbirth. She and Maître were married a mere 11 years, but she would leave 107 descendants as of 1729. Maître would carry on. He had to carry on for his children. He would eventually marry Jeanne Tellier, who is also a fellow Fille du Roi, who we've not yet profiled. And there is no marriage record for them. So let's have a look at the family they created. They would have 2 children. Marie would marry Jean Frémont and have 1 child who would survive. Jeanne would marry Jacques Le Houx and have 8 children, 4 of whom would survive. In the 1681 census, we have Maître, who's 55 years old, Jeanne, his wife, 55 years old, and then his children, Jacques, Elisabeth, Marie, Jeanne, so those are the last 2. And then we have 1 gun, 5 goats, and they own 20 arpents valaires, which is about 18 acres of land. Very good. Life would come to an end. He was 60 years of age in 1687. He is buried at Sainte Famille Church. Now here's something very interesting I found out. The book that I rely on for all of the people that are listed on the plaque at Île d'Orléans listed Martin Gerbert, and it listed his second wife and not, our Fille du Roi that we're currently profiling. So this past summer, I went to Île d'Orléans and I took the time to actually look for each letter, and here is our beautiful Isabelle. She is immortalized on that plaque. So that is the correct one because he was in Saint Famille as of 1660. So he's one of the earliest founders, actually. And so is Elisabeth Isabelle. And so that is, I was very happy to find that out because at first I was like, where's my Elisabeth? And there she is. So sometimes you have to double and triple check sources. Note to self. And here are some of the resources that I use over and over and over again. We have the Quebec Genealogical Society, Généalogie de Québec et Amérique Française, Généalogie Québec, Maple Stars and Stripes, and then some of the societies, the French-Canadian Heritage Society of Michigan, the Quebec Family History Society, the American Canadian Genealogical Society, and the American French Genealogical Society. All of these are fabulous resources for you to keep exploring your French roots. And so ends episode 57 of Les Filles Mariées. Elisabeth Isabelle Targer is one of our heroines. She did die so very, very early, very tragically. But she made an impact because she left descendants that still to this day are here and are a testament to her bravery and her courage. So for her contribution and her sacrifice, ultimately, of her life, we are so grateful and we bless her memory. Merci, grand-maman Elisabeth Isabelle. I remember you. And I also want to say thank you to my patrons, supporters, and subscribers. Thank you for all you do and for your support and your ongoing encouragement. It really means the world to me. Thank you so very, very much. So until I see you on episode 58 of Les Filles Mariées, I will bid you adieu. And until then, au revoir.